Hey everybody, welcome back to another 10-minute Marvel video. We had two big videos come out yesterday. Well, big for us. The first being my reaction and impressions of Daredevil Born Again. But the bigger one probably around Marvel's big announcement for casting for Doomsday. And 27 actors announced for it. Now that includes Robert Downey Jr. I'm not going to rehash that whole list, at least completely, but I wanted to do a video today talking about the names that were left off, and then deciding if that tells us anything about this. Now, Marvel has, and Robert Downey Jr. have teased on X that there's more. It was basically, let me see if I can find the exact thing here so I can say it correctly. Super prepared. But I know where it is. Here we go. So this is RDJ's tweet. That's what you call a deep bunch of talent. Actually, it's more like a row, but an extra long one. That must be it. Right? Question mark. Marvel Studios' response. There's always room for more. Now, I don't think that necessarily means we're going to get a full day of another row of chairs, though I kind of would love that. Imagine if they did another 26. That would be bonkers. But to me, it says more so. Let me see if I can find another list here. But to me, it says more so that we're seeing maybe some of the key groups. And check out my video yesterday, because I think I explained why or how I think we could have some of these key groups interact with each other and create an interesting plot line. But I do want to then talk about the actors who aren't on the list, or characters who aren't on the list. I'll probably refer to them more by the character name, because right now we know who everybody is playing. No real surprises, like no name of just like, what? This person hasn't been in the MCU. But I want to start with Doctor Strange and Clea. So both of them have been rumored to be in Doomsday. And I still actually think they could be in Doomsday. However, it makes sense to me that they wouldn't be listed as part of these kind of reveals. Why? Because I don't think they fit into any of the teams. So just a reminder, and you can hear the whole theory, like I said on yesterday's video, but we have an Avengers team, we have an X-Men team, we have a Thunderbolts team, we have the Fantastic Four, and we have Doom. And that's kind of our 5 groups that we got here. Now, you could say, well, Strange should be on the Avengers team, but he's off with Clea. I think we're going to get a chunk of that interspersed throughout the movie to kind of explain incursions and probably to interact with Doctor Doom, but they're going to be doing so in, my guess is, the Dark Dimension. They're not going to be in the main MCU Earth. They're not going to be on an X-Men Earth, if we get that. This is going to be them in the Dark Dimension, which means they're not going to be filming with everybody else. They'll film with RDJ, but it will be a closed-off studio location that they're going to probably try, not necessarily to keep people from spoiling it, but it's going to be set away. It's going to be filmed separately. That's my guess there. Then we have other characters. Well, let's do the next chunk of characters. We don't have any of the Champions characters. And I think that's intentional as well. I don't think we're going to see them in this. with the rumors now around a Champions show and a writer for that, there's no reason to like throw them all into this first. That show's not going to come out before this. That show may not come out before Secret Wars does. So in that case, don't put them in there. It doesn't make sense, with the exception, I would say, of Iman Vellani, Miss Marvel, and Kate Bishop, Hawkeye. Those two might work. Everybody else, Wiccan, Joe Locke did a great job with Wiccan, but Wiccan, to me, doesn't fit. We know where Wiccan's going right now. Seems to be off on a quest. And that just isn't going to make sense to me to tie that in. So I think there's an intentional reason for leaving those characters off there. Now, beyond that, who else is really missing? So, Maria Rambeau, Monica Rambeau. We have Kelsey Grammer, but we don't have those two. Why? Well, because Kelsey Grammer, I think we're going to see one that is more of the Fox X-Men look, or maybe tied into that. And so it may not be the same one that we saw at the end of the Marvels. And speaking of the Marvels, I didn't mention Captain America, or not Captain America, Captain Marvel as well. We'll get to Steve Rogers, don't worry. But we don't have Brie Larson's Captain Marvel in there. And to me, that there's a number of reasons for that. One, I mean, there's been reports just of like Brie Larson has been difficult to work with, or has not gelled with the rest of the cast, much like the rest of the MCU team really seems to have gelled together. She seems to have done that less so. Also, there's the problem of she's just exceedingly overpowered. And I think they did a decent job in the Marvels of creating complications for her with her powers and giving her the real complications that she needs, which are those kind of moral, ethical ones. As I was saying with the Marvels, you can't just punch everything. Here, this is a very much punchy sort of problem. So having her in there doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Could she show up? I think very much so. But I don't think it is needed. Then let's talk, well, some of the X-Men who weren't mentioned. Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, Halle Berry as Storm, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool. None of those were mentioned. And they did mention Gambit, which was interesting. But I think there is potentially a reason for some of them. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Famke Janssen and Halle Berry are in this film. I actually kind of expect that they will be. Now, I don't think we're going to get Elliot Page back. I don't think we're going to get... why am I blanking on her name? Actor who played Rogue, Anna Paquin, necessarily back. But I could see, especially Halle Berry, I could see her character returning for Doomsday. And they just want to keep that a surprise, because people love Storm, and I think for good reason. So, there are some X-Men characters I think that will get added. Maybe this second row, if they do an additional reveal, something like that. I could definitely see those characters being added, and they just wanted to kind of bounce stuff out with some big names in one and some big names in another. We also can then talk about the first X-Men First Class X-Men. Honestly, I don't think we're going to get any of those. It's much like we might get Ian Gruffudd, Mr. Fantastic from the early 2000s Fantastic Four. We might get him back in like a Council of Reeds during the Fantastic Four First Steps. But I don't necessarily think we're going to get a bunch of different Reeds, for example, in Doomsday. So I think they're picking and choosing who to bring back, and honestly, some of the first class are probably a bit more expensive right now. I don't know that that's true, but probably less interested in returning right now. So I'm cool with that. But within the MCU, there are more characters to talk about who weren't on the list. And now both Scarlett Johansson and Elizabeth Olsen have said they're not going to be in this film. They're not going to be in this film. For Scarlett, that'd be as a variant of Black Widow. For Elizabeth Olsen, it would be Wanda coming back. And in both cases, I'm actually fine. This is an example, kind of like with Tony Stark. I don't think we need to see another Tony Stark in this movie, even if it's played by somebody different or anything like that, because there's a good definitive end for Tony Stark. The same is true for Black Widow. And Elizabeth Olsen with the Scarlet Witch, I want more Scarlet Witch, but I don't think it makes sense to try and add how she survived and how she returned into a Doomsday project. This should be its own project. We should get a Scarlet Witch film that deals with that, or maybe they'll do the Return of the Scarlet Witch in Vision show. And if they do that, then I would still say probably keep her separate from that. So let's talk about Paul Bettany's Vision. Now, Vision definitely could return. Depends on when Vision Quest is going to come out, or this Vision show. I probably will call it Vision Quest half the time, just Vision the other half. But I suspect it may come out after. Then, just with that in my head, I don't think that it makes sense to have White Vision before the events of the Vision show up in this. He's just kind of a lost weapon at this point in time. Not that interesting a character, especially since we know we have something interesting coming up. With Vision as well, we also didn't have Mark Ruffalo, Hulk, in this. Or Tatiana Maslany, She-Hulk, in this. Now, She-Hulk has been rumored to play a role in this, and it'd be weird kind of not to have Hulk in this. There's certainly ways that you can say they're not there. Maybe Doom plucked them out first. Like got She-Hulk, Hulk, and Abomination, and Red Hulk off the planet into Battleworld, into the part of Battleworld that is just a whole bunch of Hulks. You could do that, but I think it'd be interesting to have those characters in there. Again, Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, that's a bigger name. If you want to hold something back for a second reveal, makes sense to me. Then, I mentioned Captain America, Steve Rogers before. So Steve Rogers and Chris Evans not returning. At least, not yet. And this is one, too, where does it do a disservice to the character to return? And the answer might be no. Like having Old Man Cap or Cap from the past come back to the future. Sure. But Old Man Cap, I think, is interesting. I don't need to see just another Captain America again. A multiversal Cap is interesting. However, that makes more sense to me in Secret Wars. So it makes sense. You don't spoil that one, spend that one in Doomsday. Beyond this, characters like Benedict Wong's character of Wong, not mentioned. Could he show up? Very possibly. Not too surprised that maybe a character... no, he's big enough that they probably would have mentioned him. Don Cheadle as well. Not mentioned. So, does that mean that these characters aren't going to be in it? Not necessarily. In fact, I would be a little bit surprised if both of them aren't in it. But are they going to be major players? Probably not. And finally, I know there's more, probably, that I haven't mentioned by name or stuff like that, that you can drop down in the comment section below to be like, hey, you missed this person. Do you think they're going to show up or not? And I'll try and respond, leave a comment on it. But Tom Holland wasn't on this list, wasn't one of the chairs. Now, does that mean Spider-Man isn't going to be in it? And actually, I'm going to touch on one last group of people after this, but does that mean Spider-Man's not going to be in it? Actually, I think the answer to that is yes. Why? Because the Spider-Man film is supposed to be filmed this year as well, and come out between Doomsday and Secret Wars. And depending on what happens to the MCU universe, universe is redundant there, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it could be possible that Earth is destroyed at the end of Doomsday. If there is no more Earth, what story are they telling? Or when are they telling that story? Well, I think the answer to that is happening similar time to what we see for Doomsday. In which case, it would make sense that Spider-Man isn't there because he's dealing with his own story and own thing during that time. So, to me, that one makes a ton of sense. The final one that I want to toss out, or 2, or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many it is the Defenders. The Defenders group, Wilson Fisk included as well, in that, do we get any of those guys in the show? Oh, I always come up with one more. Oh, came up with 2 more. We're going to continue. All right, the Defenders, show up or not? I could see them showing up. I could see that being kind of a reveal to maybe not major players, which is why they may not have been revealed at this point in time, but players in, say, dealing with ground level sort of stuff in New York. People panicking at the sight of a second Earth in the sky, looting, supervillains taking advantage of that, and the Defenders are the ones kind of on the ground level because Sam Wilson's Avengers team is having to try and figure out a way to stop the incursion that's going on. So, now I said I came up with 2 more, one of them being a group, and one of them being an individual. Okay, let's toss out 3. So, Moon Knight, actually, let's just do all the supernatural ones here. So, Moon Knight, Elsa Bloodstone, Ted, Jack Russell, Blade, Dane Whitman, all of those. I don't know that they fit, honestly. I would love to see more Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight, but it's very possible that this is just a save it for the Midnight Suns. Don't overcomplicate this element of the world. And the final group is the Eternals. Eternals were not mentioned, and I guess that's kind of a question is, will the Eternals ever be mentioned again? I think yes, but is this the right place for it? And how much do the Eternals/Celestials really care? There aren't many Eternals left on Earth at this point. So what, Kingo and Sprite are the ones who are left? So, sure, maybe they could get involved. Maybe that would be a fun little twist. Actually, Sprite interacting with Loki could be wonderful fun. But are they needed characters for this? No. Are they needed characters for my idea for the story? No. So, to me, it makes sense. That obviously was a whole lot there. And probably the biggest takeaways are there are going to be more added to it. I think, I didn't mention him, I guess Hawkeye, expect him to show up. Hulk, expect him to show up. Rhodey, expect him to show up. Benedict Wong, expect him to show up. Vision, probably not. Some of the more of the Fox X-Men characters, yeah, I think they're going to show up. I think we're going to have some surprises, but I do think Marvel is doing something fairly intentional here too. They don't want, and I know some people were disappointed, like, oh, they revealed everything. Well, they didn't, but two, they don't want it to be like Deadpool and Wolverine and like Spider-Man No Way Home. Both of those movies are good. I enjoy the humor and the absurdity of Deadpool and Wolverine. And Spider-Man No Way Home has a solid plot to it, character development, and kind of stretches characters in interesting ways. But the big thing about those films was, are Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire going to be in it? Is Daphne Keane, Jennifer Garner, Wesley Snipes, are they going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine? Doomsday isn't that type of film. It's going to have some of those moments, I suspect. But that's not the point of this film. This film is bigger than that. I mean, it's much like with Endgame and Infinity War. We knew who was going to be in there. We still went and saw it in droves. And I think it's important for the success of this film that we know who's going to be in there. And we go to this film because of what we've seen in the trailers and our excitement level for it. Not our anticipation for like, ooh, who's going to be the surprise person in there? Actually, I mean, can look at Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That one was huge because people wanted to see who was going to be in there. It's still a really good movie. I love that one. But I think for a lot of people, there has changed a mindset, and there's this idea of like, oh, I need to know who's going to be in there next. And they want to get out in front of that. They want to say, no, we want you coming to this movie because you are excited for the 27 names on those chairs. Not because you're excited for the 5 to 10 people who may or may not be in this movie that you're hoping will be there. So this is a longer video. Obviously, I talked a lot about a bunch of different actors who weren't in those chairs or on the back of those chairs. But let me know your thoughts. Who did I miss, or who do you think could potentially show up who wasn't on that list? Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you enjoy this content, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell. And we'll be talking about this on the 10-Minute Marvel podcast as well. That comes out on Sunday nights. You can find the podcast here on YouTube. Click onto the channel. Click on the podcast tab. Or you can search for 10-Minute Marvel wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcast from. But with that, see you next time.